So welcome once again. This is the Clear Admit Inside the MBA Admissions Process webinar series. We're going to do some quick intros here as we get started. My name is Graham. I'm the co-founder of Clear Admit. I'm going to moderate today's panel. And I wanted to just welcome our special guests today. So let's go into that. First up, we are here today from Nicole Chen. She's the Director for Student Recruitment and Admissions at Chicago Booth. Welcome, Nicole. It's great to see you again.
So much for having me here. Happy to be here.
We're also going to hear today from Kate Murphy. She's Director of Admissions at Columbia Business School. Kate, great to see you.
Thanks, Graham. Excited to be here.
Today, we've got Patrick Olson as well. He's the Assistant Director of Full-Time MBA Recruiting and Admissions at UT Austin's McCombs School of Business. Hey, Patrick.
Hi, Graham. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on these. We're also going to hear from Chris Jones. He's the Assistant Director for Recruitment Professional MBA Programs over at the Rotman School of Management at University of Toronto. Hey, Chris.
Hello, welcome. Nice to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And last but not least, we have Kate Botelho. She is a Senior Associate Director at the Yale School of Management up in New Haven. Hey, Kate.
How's it going, Graham? Hey, everyone.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I'm really excited. And as you guys know, I gave you kind of a list. There's a lot of stuff that we want to cover today in terms of digging into your application process. But we're going to start with a couple of sort of basic questions that I'd love to hear each of you weigh in on. And I did also want to mention that once we get through these kind of what I'm calling roundtable questions, we will also dig a little deeper into each of your applications to really shed some light on some of the more kind of unique or do it in your process. And I wanted to let our audience know that at the end of the main session, our panelists have agreed to stick around and take questions. We're going to set up some Zoom breakouts, just these webinars with our panelists. So please during the main that you have. It's just Nicole. Questions are totally unrelated, but I'd love to hear you to hear your kind of thoughts on these. The first is, how do you kind of weigh the different components in the application process? You know, someone comes in with like test scores and grades or their work experience, activities, recommendations. Like, is there some sort of like rubric? Do you like give scores to these things, or is it more art than science? And then I'd also love for you to just briefly comment on how Booth conducts admissions interviews. Who kind of gives the interview? How do they get scheduled? And like, how much does the interviewer know about the candidate before they sit down to have that interview?
Yeah, no, absolutely happy to answer. These are questions that I get a lot while I'm on the road when I'm talking with prospective students. So in terms of the application evaluation piece, definitely the approach we take at Chicago Booth is a comprehensive, more art than science, I guess, evaluation process. That's what we train all of our admissions committee to do. We are really taking all the different parts of your application into consideration, all kind of like pieces of a puzzle to understand who you are and your potential success in our program. So there are general buckets of questions we're trying to answer. Will this candidate be academically successful in the classroom? Does this candidate have a pretty clear idea of their goals and how an MBA can help them get there? And then kind of the other bucket of like, who else makes you the person that you are? What else are you interested and passionate about? And so we are trying to answer questions in those three buckets, but all the pieces of your application really weigh into those. There's no one set weightage for any part of the application. So for the academic piece, it's not just your test score is the make it or break it factor or anything like that. We're going to take all the data points that we have to be able to answer those questions. So there's no like cutoff point or anything like that. We are really trying to understand the whole person and everything that makes your application. So hopefully that covers kind of that. In terms of admissions interviews, we try to meet candidates where they're at and provide as much flexibility as we can in terms of modalities and where our interviews take place. So right now we have the options of doing either in-person or virtual interviews. For in-person, you could come on campus. Would love to see you in Chicago. Typically those interviews are conducted with our current students. So we have second-year students who apply to be admissions interviewers with us. If available, we also try to set up in-person interviews with our alumni around the world. So hopefully you can meet someone, an alumnus who's in your area, and do an in-person interview there. Or if for whatever reason you can't make it in person or we just don't have the availability, you can also do a virtual interview, and that could be with a current student or an alumni. We try to make it mostly current students and alumni who do interviews. Occasionally admission staff have to jump in there, but primarily we want you to be able to chat with a member of our community. Whatever modality you pick for interviews, they're evaluated just the same. There's no advantage or disadvantage to picking any certain one. Again, we want to make sure we're offering different options to hopefully meet you where you're at and what's convenient.
And the interviewer has read your entire file or just has like a resume? What's the background?
Yeah, sorry about that. So your interviewer will only have access to your resume. So they will not see your
Okay.
application beforehand. So it's just your resume. So definitely you should and can feel free to talk about other pieces of your application with your interviewer.
Okay. And I love the way you talked about the first question I had and this notion that, you want to make sure that the candidates you're bringing in can excel academically, that they're going to go on to a successful career, have an idea for, their plans there. And then this idea of contributing on campus to clubs and activities. So those are three pretty important buckets. And I think a lot of the components in the application can sort of touch on those. Let's turn though now to Kate over at Columbia Business School. Kate, what's your take on these two questions? Love to hear about how things work at Columbia.
Yeah, of course. And you'll probably notice many similarities between what Nicole just outlined and Columbia Business School. And if you've ever come to one of my info sessions, you've probably heard me say that it's more of an art than a science. So I would definitely emphasize here that we're looking to get to know who you are, what drives you, what you're passionate about, what you're motivated by, and no one piece of the application weighs more than another. We recognize that for some folks, maybe their academics are their strength, and for someone else, it might be their professional promise. And we embrace that, and we are looking for people to come in with a variety of different strengths. So generally speaking, though, when we're reading files, we're looking for things like academic capacity, professional promise, how you're going to contribute to the community, why you want to come to Columbia Business School specifically. So those are just kind of general buckets that we're looking to get a sense of, in addition to why the MBA, but there's no cutoff scores for GPAs, for scores or GPAs. There's no minimum requirement there by any means. We really, like I mentioned, are looking holistically at every application from front to back, with multiple members of our team reading your application in its entirety to get to know who you are, and what's driving you to apply for business school now at this juncture in your life and career. So I would definitely say more of an art than a science. In regards to interviews, all of our interviews are conducted virtually. Everything is on Zoom. It could be conducted by either a member of the admissions team, a second-year current MBA student who's part of our Hermes Society, which is essentially our admissions ambassador group, or an alum of the program who's been trained as an alumni ambassador. So anyone in those three kind of pools could be the interviewer on the other side of your screen. Interviews are scheduled solely based on time zone and timing. So if you're invited to interview, you'll have the opportunity to select a time that works for you, and we will match you on the back end with someone who will only have access to your resume as well.
Okay, that's perfect. I'm so glad you mentioned this idea about there's no one factor that kind of can push someone over the line when it comes to the application, that it's not, and I really think that's one of the really most amazing things about the MBA admissions process, is that it's this sort of multivariable equation with all these different components. And I also think it's really important. You mentioned that multiple people read the application, and I think that's probably true across all of our panelists today at all these great schools. And so I just want our audience to know that, you're pouring your heart and soul into your application. Fear not. It's not like one person picks up the file, glances at it for 10 minutes, and then sort of tosses it aside, and that's it. I mean, you literally, I think, in almost every instance, at least two people will read your file cover to cover and give it its due. So fear not. I love that about MBA admissions. There aren't cutoffs. It's not sort of just this sort of like put the application into a formula and they're either in or out. It's really the opposite of that in my mind. So let's turn though to Patrick at UT Austin McCombs. Patrick, do you want to weigh in on these two?
Certainly. At risk of sounding like a broken record, I would agree. It is definitely more of an art than a science. Similarly, we're just trying to check kind of three mental check boxes. Can this person handle the academic rigor that comes with an MBA program? Does this person know what their career goals are, and are we the place to help them accomplish that? And how is this person going to add value to our community? How are they going to make McCombs better than they found it? So those are the three questions we're we're asking ourselves, and it's up to the applicant to creatively come up with ways to show us they can handle the academic rigor and show us they know what their career goals are and show us they're going to add value to the program. So definitely more of an art than a science. And then with our interviews, we do things pretty different. At our school, every single person who submits an application is invited to interview. They are optional, but we want to give every single person who put the time and effort in of submitting an application the opportunity to connect with a current student. So our interviews are shorter, but they are with current students. We use the term interview because it's more universal. But when we say interview, we want our students to think of you are interviewing our students, not our students interviewing you. This is your chance to make sure McCombs is the right fit for you. This is your chance to make sure you're getting to at least one opportunity to talk to one student. To make sure it's most impactful, the applicant gets to choose the person they are interviewing with. And so you will find a list of 100 students to choose from. You'll see their profiles, their background, their LinkedIn's, and you can say, hey, that person's from the same country as me, or had a really cool internship, or had the same background, or is also part of the soccer club. And you can pick the person you want to interview. So again, we're using the term interview, but our students are not coming with questions for you. The applicant should be coming with questions for the student. And it's really a chance for you to get to know our school, our program, and make sure we're the right fit.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. And you're right. It's you guys do it a little bit differently. So I'm glad that you're underlining that. I see a lot of good questions coming into the chat. And I just want to remind anyone who's joined late that each of our panelists have agreed to stick around for a bit. At the end of the main session here, we're going to set up some Zoom breakouts so you can ask them your questions then. Because we have a lot to get through in the main session, we're not going to tackle questions here, but you can certainly ask some of these questions when you go into the breakouts. Let's turn now to Chris from Rotman. Chris, take us through, how do you guys, how do you look at the different application components, and then briefly comment on the interviews as well?
Yeah. So again, I think for those of us who are at the end of the panel here, we're going to just say it's virtually identical from so I don't want to labor that in interest of time. It is holistic at Rotman, exactly the same as Texas Booth, and there is no difference. So I don't want to labor that at all. It's completely holistic. So everything that's been said is almost identical here at the University of Toronto. So I'll just jump straight into interviews. Love hearing from the other schools about your interview process. I'm making notes as well. Ours is a little different here in Toronto. You tend to interview with members of our admissions team. So it will be Rotman staff that meet with you and chat with you for sort of 15, 20 minutes. So again, interviews are quite short. And on some occasions, we may not have interviews in person. There can be occasions where we will get you to do like a sort of an interview through like an online tool, depending on where you are and time differences. So a lot of it will just depend on the candidate preference. But yeah, love hearing about different people's strategies for interviewing candidates.
And when you all do your interviews, is the person that's interviewing the candidate in that discussion, have they already read the file, or is it like some of your peers here who said, oh, it's more just a resume, or in the case of UT Austin?
No, of course. They have all read and assessed every aspect of the application. So we have quite a
little different
recruitment and admissions team, covering again a number of sort of MBA programs. So yeah, it's a little different here, but
okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah. And I think I'm really glad that you guys do it that way, because across all the sort of top MBA programs, there are these differences. And the reason I'm underlining this is because if you're a candidate to any of these programs, you really need to do your homework on this, because imagine you're going to talk with a student at McCombs, as Patrick described. That's you interviewing them. That's you getting to know the program through the lens of a student that you've picked, right? Whereas if you're sitting down with someone at Rotman, they've read your file and they're ready to probably ask you questions about, your candidacy to dig deeper. So, and this is true across all the range of top MBA programs in the world. They all do it a little differently. So you need to know who's your audience, what do they know about you, what do they not know, in order to be effective in your interview. Kate, you've been super patient. I know Yale is always at the end of the alphabet on these events. Anything you want to add on these? I mean, I'd love to hear a bit about, obviously, about your interview process, because I think it's a bit different too. But how do you guys like look at the application components first?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, in the spirit of not repeating what others have said, I'll just plus one and echo what Kate said, and Graham, you also echoed. So maybe a third echo here on the fact that, more than one person is looking at your application. And what I really love about our application process is there are these committee discussions as well. So, I'm reading your application, spending so much time, and then I get to go into committee and talk about you and really explore the things that make you you. And so just again, know that, as Graham said, we are really taking the time with your application. I know you've spent so much time on it. And then just switching over to interviews, our interview process is remarkably similar to Chicago Booth's, probably maybe not by accident on either way, but your interview is most likely going to be conducted by a second-year student. Invitations are extended by invitation. They start coming out after our round one deadline. They haven't started coming out yet, hopefully soon, as we get to review our round one applicants. And they'll be extended at any point throughout the round. And you can interview either in person on campus, or you can interview virtually. And the interviewer will have only seen your resume. So again, very similar.
Yeah, excellent. And I will just, you also brought up something I think is important to underline, which is that you mentioned once someone applies in a given round, that the invitations sort of trickle out. And we talked about this a little bit last week, but for those of you who weren't here, that's not true at all schools. Some schools, it's like all the invites come out on a set date that school alerts you to in advance. In other cases, they all come out on a set date, but the school doesn't necessarily tell you what date that's going to be. And then obviously in the case of Yale, they'll just sort of come out as we go, right? So don't panic. Again, it's important to know what school you're applying to and how their kind of process works. But in any event, yeah, so I really appreciate you all weighing in on this stuff. I know there's a little bit of repetition, but it's important because each of you do have some nuances that are different. Speaking of those differences, I want to turn to the next segment of this webinar. What we're going to do now is we're going to go back to Nicole at Chicago Booth. And the idea here is for you to shed some light on something that's unique or a little different in your application process, that could be a question in a data form, it could be an essay that you ask, or the way you do your interviews, anything you want, but that you think candidates should be made aware of and could be helpful as they sort of journey through your process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've chosen for this to speak about probably the newest part of our application, and something we've been getting a lot of questions about is one of our essay questions. So if you've been following along the Chicago Booth application in the past years, we have two main essay questions. One asks about your short-term, long-term goals. How will a Booth MBA help you get there? That has stayed the same. I think pretty straightforward, something we want to know. The second essay question is definitely a little bit more personal, trying to get to know you. And so it has changed this year from what it has been in the past. And I think what people don't realize is we used to change our essay question every year. So it used to be completely different. And then the last one we had kind of got stuck, and we had it for a number of years. And so I think we were on both sides, for applicants and the admissions committee, trying to look for something new and be a little bit fresh in terms of giving a new opportunity to learn about candidates. So we have a new essay question for our second essay prompt. Basically, there's a series of 4 pictures, all hand-selected by, I will say, myself, to just showcase different elements of the Booth experience. We ask you to identify one that resonates with you and talk about how it relates to a value that you hold, something that in your personal life, a value that you hold. The reason, and I'm very curious to see what answers we get. This is our first time, and so I haven't really seen the essays yet, but this is really a chance to get to know more about you, maybe something something you value, but something, it could be interest, passion, that might not be otherwise shown in the rest of your application. So something we might not clearly see through a resume, work experience, your transcript. It could be maybe a little bit in your activities, but something that you want to highlight that's going to show something about who you are, and maybe something that you hold as important to you as well. So there just might not be a good space somewhere else in the application, but this is something that you really hold near and dear, and you feel like is something that makes you you, something that you're going to bring to the community, that you want to highlight to the admissions team. So we wanted to give a space for that. So there's no right answer. There's no best picture. Again, I picked them all. I think they're all great. So there's no best picture. It's not meant to be tricky. Even your response in a lot of ways doesn't even have to be directly tied to Booth. It doesn't have to be. One of the pictures is like from our new venture challenge. It's our, Startup Accelerator program. you don't have to pick that one because you want to be an entrepreneur. And so that one is the one that resonates with you. It could be something completely different if it's something about, you know, being proactive, taking risks. Like there's so many different ways you can, you know, relate to these pictures that we're not looking for necessarily specific answer even for each picture. So I think it's an opportunity if you like to be creative to do that. Or again, just, you know, look at the pictures, see what calls to you and speak to that. So I think, again, just a great way we're trying to get to know about people in a little bit different way.
So I love that you're the one that picked these photos because I had no idea that that was the case. So, and just for those who don't know, I mean, basically there are 4 photos on their website, and you know you have to pick one and write an essay about why that picture sort of speaks to you in some way. And they're all photos of, I think they're all of students or people on campus at Booth doing different things. So, you have this other question that I wanted to ask you about while we're talking about your application, and that is, there's a question, or it's almost like a part of the data form, I guess, where you basically, you know, ask people to list and describe current and past involvement in extracurricular activities. And, you know, it seems pretty straightforward, but there's a preamble on that question. And the preamble says, with more than 80 student-led groups, Chicago Booth strongly values the unique interests and pursuits of students outside of the classroom. And so I just wondered, are you saying that because the idea in learning about people's interests and activities is to sort of think about, well, how might this person fit into our community? And so you have these 80 existing groups, or I'm sure there are new ones every year. And so you're thinking about like, I mean, would it be smart for a candidate to sort of get familiar with like what is happening extracurricularly on campus as they think about presenting their past experiences? Or because it's an interesting preamble.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I don't think it's meant to imply that you have to find out what clubs you would want to join and then somehow suddenly join a bunch of extracurricular activities that align with that. But I think we want to include that just to highlight that the Booth experience is a very student-driven experience. All of our clubs are student-led. We, you know, our student government really drives a lot of what the students are looking for. And so we just want to highlight that that's, I think, a key component that, you know, students are all finding different ways that they're creating their Booth experience, you know, curriculum, community, you know, how they're spending their time. And so just wanting to highlight that there's a lot of different opportunities and things to do. And with that, you know, in the activity section, we are trying to learn, again, everything kind of else, similar to, you know, the essay question. Wanting to know what makes you you, what are you interested and passionate about, maybe outside of your regular work responsibilities, just outside of the workplace or, you know, academics. So a great opportunity if there is something that you're really dedicated to highlight that there. So nothing really like specific, but it is a really great place again for us to get to know how else do you spend your time. I think there's a lot of different ways people can contribute to community also. And so there's not necessarily, again, specifics that we're looking for, like, are they in this many clubs or volunteer at this many places or anything like that. But it's a good place for us to get to know a little bit more about what makes you tick and again, how you're spending your time and whether that's personal or professional responsibilities.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, you know, it's great that you guys underline that because I do think that one of the benefits of going to any of these top MBA programs is that there is this like life outside of the classroom that's quite dynamic and there's a lot on offer. So familiarizing yourself with that is a great idea. And as Patrick said earlier, I think you said this, Patrick, something about how you kind of wonder how is someone going to come into your community and leave it a better place? Like how are they going to get involved and make a difference? So I think that's smart to keep in mind. Thanks, Nicole, for all those insider tips. Let's turn to Kate at Columbia Business School. Same assignment, Kate. Just take us through something that's a little different about your application or that you just want to call attention to.
Sure. And it may sound a little bit repetitive, but I do want to make sure that we highlight something that I've gotten a lot of questions about throughout the cycle this year and over the summer on the road. So I think it's definitely worthwhile highlighting. We have 3 essays at Columbia. The third essay is fairly new. It was introduced last year, and it asked folks how they would co-create their optimal MBA experience at CBS. And we've gotten a lot of questions this year already about what do we mean when we say co-create? So I'd love to shed a little bit of light on that and give you some tips on how to approach that question and what we're really looking for here as an admissions committee. As was recently just discussed ad nauseum, it's a imperative part of the MBA experience at all of our schools to get involved outside the classroom, right? We have over 80 active student clubs and organizations. There's student government. There's a lot of ways in which you can get involved and get leadership experience and take advantage of various extracurricular opportunities outside the classroom, whether that be affinity-based clubs, professional clubs for recruitment purposes, international clubs, social clubs, you name it. So we really are looking to glean in your application how you're going to take advantage of those types of things and how that's going to help launch you in the direction of your post-MBA goal. So in addition to clubs, there are career management center resources. There are an abundance of conferences and guest speakers that are coming to campus at CBS. There are so many things happening on a daily basis that it would be impossible to take advantage of all of it. So what we're really looking to learn in SA3 is what resources and clubs and organizations and events are you excited to partake in and learn from, but also how are you going to contribute? Are there particular study tours abroad that you're excited to take the lead on planning? Are there particular conferences that we host on campus that you're looking forward to securing a speaker for? So, the ways in which you're going to contribute to the community and make a lasting, meaningful impact on the folks around you, but also what are you going to take away from it? Is there an executive in residence that works with our career management center who is, aligned with your industry that you're hoping to meet with and learn from and get some advice on how to navigate next steps in the recruiting process, for example? Is there a particular adjunct that teaches a class that you're excited to take? So it's a little bit of the give and take here that we're looking for when we say co-create. How are you going to leverage the resources that we offer at CBS and also kind of give back and contribute what you have learned about yourself and what you hope to share with your peers in the classroom. So hopefully that helps when you are thinking about how to approach the third essay. And I'm happy to answer any questions in the breakout about our other essays too.
Okay. Yeah. Terrific. I think, I'm glad that you're shining a light on that. It's kind of related in some regards because you have, in your application form, you allow people to upload a resume and you actually say the resume can be 1 or 2 pages. And I did note, also in that application form, there's there's a limit on sort of 3 collegiate and 3 post-collegiate activities that one could list. So I have kind of a 2-parter. One is if I have more than 3 activities, either from university or current, can I put them on the resume? Is that probably a good place to have them if there's just overflow? And then to your kind of point that you were just making, like if I'm writing about this stuff in the essay, I presume that, if an activity is important to me and I've been, involved in it and want to continue to do that, it should be appearing somewhere in the file, right? I mean, as one of my main activities, et cetera. But so yeah, if you could comment on like what merits a sort of 2-page resume versus 1 and where to put some of this extra stuff.
Yeah, totally. I will preface this by saying some folks on our team have a preference for a 1-page resume, me being one of them. So to the best of your ability, if possible, being as concise and direct and to the point in your resume, wherein you're not kind of outlining everything that you've ever done on a day-to-day basis, but really pulling out the ways in which you've contributed in a meaningful capacity to the organizations you've worked at, highlighting accomplishments, achievements, is our best advice there. It doesn't need to be tailored to business school. It could be the resume that you use to apply for a job. If you have an extensive career where you have been working maybe on the higher end, most folks for CBS for the full-time program have between 4 and 6 years of work experience. If you're beyond that, or if you've pursued research or things like that end up taking up a little bit more space, that's why we allow for the 2-page. We understand that there are instances where there are so many things that you want us to know about. But if you can limit it to 1, I would say that is our best advice. And generally, folks with 4 to 6 years of full-time work experience can do that on a 1-page resume. In terms of extracurriculars, we're asking for the top 3 in the application because we really want you to select the ones that are most relevant time-wise. We care a lot about the things that you did during undergrad, but if you are involved in 3 things currently that are really meaningful to you, I think we'd rather hear that. We also want to hear about the things that are relevant to your career goals and the things that you're going to get involved with at CBS. So maybe you dabbled in something that didn't really carry over into your application in any way. It's not part of the through line of your story. don't feel like you have to include that in the application field, and really focus on the ones that are going to be more relevant and complement the career goals and the path that you're telling us you're hoping to take with us at CBS and beyond.
Okay.
If there are things that you want to put on your resume in terms of extracurriculars and hobbies and you have the space, by all means, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's super useful. And I do think, I mean, I know when I used to read files, I was an admissions officer before. One page for a resume for most people is usually enough. I agree with you.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb I used to have was like, if you have like 10 years of work experience, okay, you're probably going to need more space. But if you're in the sort of general range that most MBA candidates are, it should probably be able to fit on one page. Let's move things along. Let's turn to Patrick at McCombs. Same assignment, Patrick. Tell us about something that's a little bit different in your application process and that you want us to know more about.
Yeah, I just want to, re-emphasize our interview process because it's again different and confusing. So again, we invite everyone to interview, but again, that's more of like a 20-minute conversation with a current student. Now, it's not to say that the traditional interview is forgotten, but the traditional interview we replaced with our video assessment. And so you will still get that Q&A aspect of an interview where we are asking you questions, you are responding, but we do that through recorded video. So we record our question, you record your answer. Reason we do that is because, again, we want our process to be equitable across the board, and everyone who applies to McCombs goes through the same exact process. So everyone who submits an application will complete these videos. So if you think of that traditional 1 hour interview experience, the first 40-ish minutes are usually the Q&A, me asking you a question. That's been replaced by me recording a question, you recording your answer back. And that last 20 minutes where it's like, those are all the questions I have for you, what questions do you have for me? We kept that component, and that is when you get to talk to a current student. So we kind of broke up what's the traditional interview model into two pieces. So when it comes to the video assessment, I definitely encourage you to practice what it feels like to be talking to yourself in a room on a camera. It is awkward. If it feels awkward, you're doing it right. Practice what the timing feels like. Practice what your lighting and background looks like. All those minor things. And also do your best to come off as practice being organic and authentic, and don't over prepare. I think if there's one mistake students fall into, they are over preparing questions, they're over preparing answers, and they're coming off very rehearsed and robotic. And we can see people dotting I's and looking over to the other monitor to remember to say something or reading off of a script. And it just comes off disingenuous. So I'd rather you flub over your words and be a human than have this perfectly rehearsed response. So our interview process is a little different, again, broken into the videos and the conversation. But again, it's our way of providing access to everyone and really getting to know you, know every single applicant.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. And I think just to be clear here, if I remember correctly, there are 5 questions that everyone has to answer, right?
Correct.
And you don't tell them what those questions are in advance. So they log into the system and they're given a question, they record an answer. And do they get to re-record it, or they just get one shot? I can't remember.
One shot.
One shot, right?
But you do get 30 seconds to think about your answer. And so I remind people
Okay.
that's 30 more seconds than you get in a live traditional interview. Use that time.
Yes.
And they're not trick questions. If you were to use AI or Google or I'll plug your chat bot, Graham. I bet you if you plugged in your bot some MBA interview questions, practice those. They're not gotcha questions, and they're all questions about tell me about a time when. But yes, they have one shot.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You're plugging the Clear Admit. We have a little AI bot that's a lot of fun to play with. But I did want to ask you another question. So you have this essay in your application, and basically, for those of you who haven't seen it, I mean, you're supposed to kind of imagine yourself at graduation and sort of think about, what have I learned and accomplished during my time at McCombs? And so I had a question for you, which was, if I'm writing this essay, what's the right mix? Like, because I could talk about, well, I really enjoyed taking this course with this professor. It's really helped me line up, my job that I want to have and to be successful in my career. So I could focus really like kind of practically, but also maybe I like join, there's some other, there's all these sort of fun activities that happen in business school too. I presume a mix is what you're kind of looking for, but, and also while you're answering that, like, what's the best way for me to get up to speed on all these things? Is it through that conversation that I have with a student? Is it just by looking at your website? Like, any advice there?
Yeah, I'm noticing a theme so far where a lot of us are asking the same thing, but in different ways. So this is kind of like an indirect way of us asking, like, what do you plan to get involved with? Like, how do you plan to make your impact? And have you done like the research and homework to know what we offer at McCombs and what you want to be involved with? My advice for students with this question is one, talk to our current students, attend our events, join webinars to learn more about our program, our offerings, our opportunities. Um, and then think about the ones you want to join and what excite you most. Talk about those in your essay. They can be fun. You could be really excited to join the soccer club, or you could be really excited to join the investment fund, or really excited to take a certain class. There's not a right or wrong answer. We just want to see that you've done some homework and you really want to give a strong interest specifically in McCombs. The layer to make it, move it from a good essay to a great essay is someone who can draw that through line from what they've done to what they're going to do. Because it's very
Mhm.
easy to fall into a trap of this hypothetical essay. I always give the example of it's really easy to say, I want to join the club soccer team and I'm really excited to play a role in that because I love soccer. But a stronger essay is someone who talks about, yeah, I want to join the club soccer team because I've played soccer since I was 10 and I volunteer every Saturday with kids at my local elementary school and teach them soccer. And it's how I stay mentally healthy and it's a really part of my well-being. Through that, I learned a lot about you and you showed us something you're interested in at
Mhm.
McCall. So find a way to kind of showcase yourself and what you've done with what you want to do. So it's an art and a blend, but it's really helpful if we can learn about you while you're demonstrating interest in the school.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. And I'm glad. I mean, this has just been really helpful. I mean, I think you're right. Everyone here on the panel wants to learn about how someone's going to fit in to their program, to their community. And I will say to applicants, it's not, this isn't like just an exercise. Like, this is actually useful for you, not only to make your application strong, but you need to figure out where you want to land, because in an ideal scenario, you get into all the schools you apply to, and then you have to decide where you want to go. And I think there is quite a bit of fit and culture that is worth identifying as you travel through. Let's move along, though. We got to talk to Chris at Rotman. Chris, take us through something in your application that you want to call attention to.
Yeah, okay. So again, there are many aspects that have already been discussed that are not that different to my colleagues. So as you can see here, there is clearly a little bit of a pattern. Most schools generally have a very similar sort of approach, and we're looking for quite similar components with regards to our essays. So again, ours are quite similar. We have rather than, yeah, again, so sort of a lengthy essay, we have, I would say, they're like shorter statement questions. So you could say they're an essay, but they typically are around 200 words each. And of course, we ask questions around kind of career mapping and really helping us understand your goals for the MBA program, because of course career outcomes are so important to people doing a full-time program, right? And for many of you could be coming to Canada for the first time, so looking to work, right, in a different geography. So we want to make sure that, people have realistic career goals, that we can also help them and match them to those career goals. And so that's absolutely key. So that's going to be one of the key questions that you will need to answer as you go through the application. And then the second one can be a little bit more, it's kind of more random. So actually, just to give you guys a heads up of what we do, there is no essay when you initially submit your application. You would just submit sort of the basics, the resume, transcripts, and GMAT, etc. And then what we then do is, once submitted, we would then ask you to do the essay questions again through like an online tool. And the first question is set for everybody. Told you about the career mapping and going through the stages of how you plan to achieve your career goals. And then the second question might be a little bit more random. And again, those are generally around, tell us something about what makes you interesting to us, how are you going to contribute to the Rotman and the U of T community. Again, so I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have said in the interest of time, because it's very similar, very, very similar. it's about getting to know you as an individual, trying to understand what you can bring to the student community beyond just good grades, right? And being on the dean's list. So I think those are always the key components we're looking for through the essay component, because any other the information we can just get from transcripts and things. So I'm going to keep my answer brief because I really do feel my colleagues have covered pretty much what we do at your schools is what we do at Rotman. Yeah.
And I do want to ask you one follow up, and that is that
Yeah.
I think it's really unique the way that you're doing the essays, and I think it's new
Mm,
for this year. Maybe it
yeah.
started last year, but this idea
Yeah.
that instead of like having infinite hours to write perfectly polished
Mhm.
essays or get AI to help or whatever, and upload them with the application, it happens after, and it's in a kind of timed setting where they go
Yeah.
online, they don't know what the question is, at least for the second one, and they have to
Yeah.
write something. And I can't remember
Yeah.
if it's if they have 10 minutes or something to respond to the question or something. But
Yeah.
so what was on your mind as you guys reshaped that process? Was it like, yeah, we don't need people to like spend hours and hours giving us something that's
Mhm.
perfect. We want to see how they can react to a question and write it out in real time, or what's behind that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a little bit of a combination of both. We felt that up and just for the audience, up until sort of this last cycle, the essay was like, they had a thousand words or 1,000 word count to write an essay, which was, generally focused on, what are they, tell us a little bit about yourself outside of your resume and your academics. What makes you someone that would be interested in joining our student community. So a bit of a blend of kind of what people have already been talking about. But we did tend to find that obviously we are now in an AI world and a chat GPT world, and we're not saying that all our candidates were just using that tool to write essays, but we weren't sure if the candidate or Rotman was getting enough from that component. So we thought the idea of using a timed approach would be interesting. I think it is a great way to test people's ability to write off the cuff, as I call it in the UK, without too much preparation, because ultimately, you need to have those writing skills. They're still very valuable to us at Rotman. And also, I think it's really important for people to be able to think quickly and be able to answer these questions quickly and concisely. So we've tried it. We have had applications. Our round one deadline passed. So I can't tell you if it's going to be a success or a complete failure. But we're trying it new, and I think in an AI world, I think candidates are going to have to understand that universities and higher education are going to look at other tools we can use to encourage students to be more creative and think on their feet, and really, be aware of how important their creative writing skills are on the fly, because you're going to have to do that in the professional world. So
Right.
that's our philosophy. Come back to me in 6 months and I'll tell you if it's been successful. But I don't want anyone
Excellent.
on this call to get stressed out about a tool we're using or a timed kind of essay approach. You really shouldn't. The questions are always going to be things that you can easily answer, because we're asking you questions really about yourself or about your
Hmm.
motives for the University of Toronto, right? And those, we would assume you've already considered those as you're applying to this program or any other MBA programs that are still asking you similar questions. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Thanks for shedding light
Mm,
on that. I just was curious.
yeah.
It did catch my eye, and I was wondering about that. Um,
Yeah.
Kate, again, you've been really patient. Kate from Yale. Let's talk a little bit about the Yale application, which also has some kind of interesting quirks to it. So tell us about something you want us to know more about in the process.
Yeah, sure, Graham. Thanks. I waffled even through these through listening to my colleagues talking here. I waffled between talking about the essay and the video questions. And I think I'm going to talk about the video questions because I think there's a lot out there about our essay and how you all should approach it. And I can talk about that a little bit more in the breakout as well. But the video questions are kind of fresh on my mind because we did make some changes this year to them. None that would be perceivable to all of you. But we used questions too. The questions themselves are different this year as well. And so I'm going to stop setting it up. So the video questions are something that become available to applicants once they submit their application and pay their application fee, you have access to the video questions. So similar, to what Rotman was just talking about with their essays. The video questions are, there are 2 questions that you'll go into a third-party platform to complete. They are randomized, so in theory, no 2 applicants will get the same set of video questions. They were initially introduced to our application process many years ago. So the video questions are not new to us. We've been using them for, I think, about 10 years at this point. And they were initially introduced to as a replacement for a TOEFL or IELTS. So if you are a student coming internationally, you do not have to submit a TOEFL or IELTS as part of your SOM. But we made this part of the application process for everybody because we felt that it really added kind of this dynamic, as someone who's reading your application, I'm just reading words. And so this introduced a way to get to know you a little bit better in a different medium. So there, like I said, the video questions are 2 questions. Once you, submit your application and pay your fee, you can go onto that third-party platform and you will answer those 2 questions. They are given to you. They're, again, similar to what my colleague at McCombs was talking about. You will be asked a recorded question by one of the committee members. So it's a recorded question. And then immediately you will be starting to answer that question. So you don't have time to think about your response. It's very much meant to simulate what you might experience in an interview setting. So you'll start answering that question immediately after, and you have 60 seconds to answer the question. And you'll do that twice. You cannot re-record. Once you've recorded, you are done. However, you are able to do a practice question before you actually start the video questions. And that's something that I would highly recommend. Do that practice question as many times as you want. We won't know how many times you do it. We won't see your recordings for that, but that just gives you the opportunity to understand what the platform is going to look like, what's going to happen once this, actually this exercise starts, and just allow you to get those jitters out, allow you to, see how you talk with your hands, or more, you actually go into those recorded questions. The questions themselves are not meant to stump you. Realistically, you should just kind of know yourself and know why you want an MBA. And if you know those 2 things, which I hope you do, you'll do very well in the video questions. They're very much meant to just get to know you in a different capacity than some of the questions that we've asked you previously in the application.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I do like the idea that more and more schools are moving into this domain of like, hey, here's a question, answer it live. Because the idea of having all this time to, get somebody to help you or AI or whatever is not going to give you the authentic candidate. So one other thing, and then we got to move on to our final segment, but I did want to ask you, Yale has something that you call the behavioral assessment that I think all applicants complete. And I don't really even know how to describe this, but there's a good quote on your website that says it's a set of inter and intrapersonal competencies that are associated with success in a management program. It sort of measures those things, apparently. But can you just explain, how long does this thing take? Should I be worried about it? Is it, am I going to get rejected if I don't do well? What sort of test is this?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking this, because I do think it does cause a fair amount of anxiety for applicants, and really it shouldn't, because we like to say that we use this with a light touch in the process. And so basically we use the behavioral assessment in combination with the other academic factors in your application. So we look at it when we're looking at your transcripts, and we're looking at it when we look at your test scores. And so those are both cognitive assessments. We wanted a non-cognitive assessment that helped us like I said, with a light touch, maybe take a chance on an applicant if maybe their testing profile is a little bit lower, or maybe they didn't perform as well as they could have in their undergraduate or graduate setting. But we know based on kind of everything else that they could be a really great candidate for the program. And so the behavioral assessment helps us to, feel confident in making an admissions decision on this applicant. So it's actually only used in your favor. It's never used if we don't need that additional information. So if we have enough support on the academic side of the house, we don't need to go to the behavioral assessment. So for many candidates, it's actually not even used in the evaluation of their application. It'll only take you about 20 minutes to complete. It's a set of 130 statements. It's all about you. Nothing you need to do to prepare. You shouldn't prepare. Really, you should just go in and answer the way you would. And again, it's never going to hurt you in the application process.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I appreciate you shedding light. And I remember Bruce or someone on your team saying this idea that it only can help put you over the line. It doesn't hurt you at all. So, all right. So hopefully that puts some people at ease. We have one more thing that I want to do in the remaining minutes here before we open up the breakouts. And that is we have some fun kind of lightning round questions. And I think in the interest of time, we have 3 questions and we'll stay with you, Kate, and we'll go backwards through the alphabet, but I'm going to have you answer each of the 3 questions. So the first one is, what is the best place to eat on or near campus at Yale SOM?
Yeah, sure. If you're looking for dinner, it's Tavern on State. And if you're looking for lunch, it's Atticus, either in downtown or East Rock. There's 2 locations.
All right. No pizza or either of those pizza places or no?
Graham, I'm so sick of talking about pizza. We have such
Yeah,
good
New
food in
Haven.
New Haven.
That's true. But yeah, New Haven's very famous for pizza. All right. Next lightning round question is, what's just one piece of general application advice you would give for the folks joining us today?
Sorry, Graham.
Oh, did you not?
Sorry about that. So application advice, sorry. I would just say, I think everybody's kind of hit on this already. You want to be authentic in this process. You want to be yourself. You do not want to try and guess at what people are thinking that they want you to say. Be yourself through this process as much as you can. And I think that really is helpful guiding practice.
All right. And one more for you, Kate. We have one more kind of lightning question. And this one is all the schools today, there seems to be this interest in outside activities and hobbies. What's a fun hobby that you regularly pursue?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to cook. I really enjoy it just kind of weeknight for sure, but also on the weekends doing some really kind of big, fancy meals. And I'll say that like I've taken classes, and I would say that if there's any amateur people like cooking for themselves and really wanting to get better, there's nothing better that you can do than take a knife skills class. Knowing how to chop an onion properly will really help in any kind of thing that you're doing.
All right. Next time in New Haven, I'm going to ask for an invite. All right. Let's go to Chris. Chris, what's the best place to eat on or near campus at University of Toronto?
Well, where do I begin? Toronto being probably the most multicultural city in the world, you can pretty much get absolutely everything. So wherever you're calling from the world, we have food for you in Toronto. But I'd probably say on or around campus, either Sushi on Bloor, the Victory Cafe. You have to be here really, but those are great spots for food close and on campus. Yeah, but
All right.
Toronto. We're a foodie city.
Yeah. How about one piece of application advice for everybody?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, be yourself, right? Be yourself. Try not to, be something that you're not, right? It's like we are looking for all kinds of people at Rotman, right? Don't feel that you need to apply and appear as though you are, an investment banker or a management consultant. If that's not what you are, it's okay. Just be yourself and show us,
Mhm.
your true self. And I think those are the students and candidates that are always successful at Rotman. I don't know what else to say. I'm not going to feed you
Yeah.
a sort of like a standard line. It's just like, honestly, just be yourself and apply for the program, and we will appreciate that.
Okay. And last thing from you, what's a hobby that you enjoy pursuing?
Oh, another good one. Well, I know my colleague from Texas kept talking about soccer. You might be into it, but as you can tell by my accent, I'm actually from the UK, but I've lived in Canada for a number of years. So we call it football. I love football. It is like I'm English, right?
It's
It's
in
part of
your
our
blood.
DNA. So my kids play it, and I still play. So that is my favorite, I guess, hobby outside of work. Yeah.
All right.
Huge football fan.
Terrific. All right, thanks for that, Patrick. Now you're going to get to unveil this. We'll get to it in a second, but I'm curious to hear what your hobby's going to be because yeah, I wondered when you were talking about football or soccer. But first, what's the best place to eat on or near campus at McCombs?
Yeah, I mean, Austin is a food truck city, so we have lots of food trucks within walking distance. My go-to is a tiny little rundown food truck across the street called USA Halal. Um, it's great, but depending on what type of food, there's a food truck any which direction.
All right, cool. How about a piece of general advice for people applying to McCombs?
Yeah, we haven't talked about this yet, so I'm excited to say something different, but make sure you spend some time on your LinkedIn page. A lot of people spend so much time on their application and never touch their LinkedIn profile. So it's an optional piece of information that, at least on our application, you share, but we will look at it and cross-reference it, and it's helpful to us for us to get some more color and depth to your application. So spend as much time on your LinkedIn as you are on your resume.
That's a great point. And you guys are not the only school that has that in the application form as like, hey, if you have a LinkedIn profile you want to share, put it in. And so I think you're making a really good point. Cannot hurt to set it up. And look, even if you don't get into business school or decide not to go, it never hurts to have a really nice, polished, up-to-date LinkedIn profile page. All
Exactly.
right, let's now the big unveil. What is your
Yeah.
hobby that you want to share?
So I don't play soccer. Attend all the football tailgates, so I'm a big Texas Longhorn football fan. But I'd say my most consistent hobby is definitely running. I'm a big runner, and my favorite event on campus is the Longhorn Run, a 5K, 10K every year. And the students will say peer pressure. I like to say encourage everyone to run with me. So we get probably about 100 MBAs that run it
Oh, wow.
every year. So it's a lot of fun.
Oh, excellent. All right. Yeah, I thought when you say football, just for everyone's understanding, you mean American football,
Yes,
like
let
the
me clarify.
NFL or
In
college
Texas, football
football. Yeah.
means one thing, and it is American
Yeah.
football.
Yes, just for Krista's benefit. All right. So let's go to Kate at Columbia. Kate, what is the best place to eat on or near campus? Maybe an unfair question in New York City, but there's got to be something you like right nearby, right?
Absolutely. I'll focus on the West Harlem area where we are in Manhattanville. And I was going to say Dinosaur Barbecue, which is practically on our campus, but I don't think that it would rival Texas barbecue. So I'm going to go with the Expat, which is a really great like Southeast Asian restaurant right around the corner from us. It's our go-to for lunch. They have really great lunch specials if you're into like stir fry or pad thai. Highly recommend. Great deals too, affordable for New York.
All right. Wow. Excellent. All right. I'm getting hungry now. What's one piece of admissions advice you would give to Columbia's applicants?
To take your time in the process. It's obvious to us if you are rushing through your application. So making sure that you give yourself enough time to be thoughtful about how you approach your essays, to give your recommender a heads up and give them ample time to write a thoughtful letter of recommendation on your behalf. Don't just slap it together. I'm often asked, should I apply round one if I don't feel great about it, or should I apply round two with a more polished and complete application that I'm confident in? And our answer would always be to wait and submit the application that you feel good about. So take your time, proofread, have somebody who maybe isn't familiar with the MBA application process, bring them into it and have them read your application and give you some feedback around whether you're being authentic and clear and direct in what you're trying to communicate to us.
Yeah, excellent advice. And I'm glad you mentioned the recommenders. Yeah, don't assume that just by putting their names into the form online that you're done with them. Like you need to kind of coach them and make sure they're on top of it and that they know your story. I mean, it's really important. Real quick, what is a hobby that you regularly pursue?
So I'm going with the exercise train here and saying I'm a Pure Barre enthusiast. I'm actually about to be 39 weeks pregnant this week. So haven't been able to pursue that hobby for a little bit, and I'm very much looking forward to getting back into it. So yeah.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Let's go to Nicole. Nicole, these three questions for you. Best place to eat on or near campus?
Yeah.
I'll let you pick either of the campuses because I know you guys have like a downtown campus and the main campus. So if you want,
So I was
whichever
imagining
one.
our main campus for the full-time MBA program in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Chicago, just to narrow it down a little bit. Originally, I
Okay.
was going to say something about the food trucks we have, but then hearing about Austin probably not the same in that. So for us, just like a block down from the building, there's like this little street that has a bunch of different restaurants. One that I really like is called Medici. It has a bakery in the morning, so pastries, amazing, easy to grab, and coffee. And then they have really great like sandwiches and salads and stuff for lunch. So that's a pretty easy go-to we do for a lot of our events.
All right.
Too.
I thought you were going to say that you all go eat at the Bear, but I'm realizing that's not an actual restaurant. It's just a TV show. But
although I've been to the Italian beef place that it's like.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Next question. One piece of general advice, because we're running over time here, but one piece of general advice that you would give to folks.
I'll go off of Kate from Columbia, what she just said in terms of taking amount of time and really proofreading. But on the tactical side, make sure you proofread so everything you're putting in is what you want to put in, especially if you're copying and pasting from somewhere else into the application. Make sure it's the answer you actually want for the school that you actually intended it for. And just making sure that's there, making sure you're answering every question. You know, the questions are in the application for a reason. So if you're skipping one, even if it's optional, make sure again, you're just making sure you're answering everything that you should be answering.
Yeah. Okay. And then a hobby for you.
Yeah. I'll go not the exercise route. To Kate from Yale's point, I wish I could cook, but I can't really. So if going out to eat is a hobby, that would be mine. Chicago, fantastic food city. So I'm the person who's like looking at lists, finding places to go, looking at places from the Bear, has an Excel sheet, all of that. So there's a lot of really great restaurants to try here.
All right. Everyone knows who to ask if you're looking for restaurants in Chicago. Nicole's kind of your go-to. What I want to do now is sincerely thank Nicole and Patrick, Chris, Kate, and Kate for taking part today. We're going to let you guys slip backstage and get you into the Zoom breakouts so that you can chat directly with the candidates. So thanks so much for doing this. Everyone else, stay with me. We're just going to let our panelists get into their breakouts. We will open up the breakout rooms in like 1 minute, but I just want to give them time to grab a cup of water and just get them situated. While we're doing that, somebody's asking what my hobby is. I guess I'm a big music fan, so I have a massive collection of vinyl records. That's probably my number one kind of hobby, is collecting and seeing music. So while we wait and get them settled, I did want to remind everyone that there are a ton of resources on our website. I said some of this last week, but for those of you who weren't with us, I mean, clearedmit.com is free for applicants, and there's just a wealth of resources there. We interview schools. We have video of myself and Alex Brown on our team talking about the application process. We have this tool called ApplyWire where you can put in your profile anonymously and get feedback on the schools you're targeting and your career plan. I strongly recommend using that. We have this Ask Clear Admit AI, generative AI bot that's actually better than ChatGPT. We actually use ChatGPT to build it, but it's a better bot because it's based on all the kind of years and years of experience that we have. As you probably know, ChatGPT alone goes out and reads everything on the internet. So it's sort of a too many cooks problem when you get into the nitty gritty of getting into top business schools and getting advice on that. So I'd strongly encourage you to use the bot on our site. We just built this amazing large language model that fuels it. We also have interview guides if you happen to get an interview at a business school, and an interview archive where candidates before you have all left stories about what it was like to interview at schools. So there's all kinds of great stuff on the website. Definitely join our community. If you're not already a registered user on the site, do so, because you need to register to do some of these things. But again, it's all free. So please hang out on the site and just get the most out of it, because it'll really help you as you apply to these schools. That's probably enough from me. I want you all to be able to chat with our panelists, and they should be ready now in their breakouts. So we're going to open up the breakouts. One footnote: if you are using Zoom in a browser, it doesn't always work very well with breakouts. So if you have the app on your phone or an app on your desktop, that's always the best way to go when trying to get into the breakouts. But head off, ask your questions of our panelists, and then come back next week. We're doing this again with 5 more schools. I can't remember exactly which schools it is, but I think it's LBS and INSEAD and a couple of other US programs as well. So come on back next week, same time, same place. And thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, have fun in the breakouts asking your questions.